Rajni, what's wrong?
Tom, I have a script and I don't know what to do with it. Should I burn it? Feed it to my cat?
You need some writers group therapy.
Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. So everyone has to do it, but it's such a pain in the butt. How do you write a good query letter?
Well, you have to have something good to tell people about. That's the first step. I've been doing a lot of query letters the last few months. Ever since one September, a TV pilot I did was in a big contest that PlayStation put on. It was a top 10 finalist. So I felt like, wow, this is really cool. I have something I can use as like a lead-in to my query letter that will grab, the attention of managers or agents or producers. So my query letter started with top 10 finalist and award-winning, producer, writer, whatever. And so when they read it, it's not just, here's my script or you should represent me. It was more about, just like when you're trying to write a log line for a film, you want to do something short, sweet, and really grab someone's attention. So that was my lead-in. And then I went through a lot of versions of the query letter. I kept refining it and changing it, and I really landed on a nice one that's really short and sweet. And I even got a compliment on it from one manager because I got down to the point where I just did bullet points. It was like, this is what I did, last year, and I had my successes from last year with our horror film and the PlayStation contest. And then I said, this is my goals for this year. And I listed out how I was going to use the things that happened last year to get to the next level, so to speak, this year. And I sent out a lot of query letters, but the ones I got the most response from were the ones that had those bullet points. So the latest version I've been using. So the key thing to take away there is you got to grab everyone's attention and don't waste their time. So you can ramble on about how awesome your stuff is, but get to the point, unlike me in this podcast so far, and be as brief as you can, but as poignant as you can, so that they're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I want to look at that.
What's funny is I think you and I approach writing query letters or cover letters very differently, although I agree with you on a lot of those points. And I don't know if it's maybe it was the way I was taught or something, because I would write, I trained as a journalist, and you have to write a lot of cover letters, and they really check those letters. They have to be, first of all, grammatically correct, no spelling errors. You make sure you're addressing it to the right person. Any little error like that, they just put it right away in the garbage. But you also have to grab them, just like when you're writing a lead in a story, you have to grab them from that first line. And I've seen a lot of really cool leads, I guess, in a query letter. Like one was a guy who wanted to be a food critic. His first line was, I'll eat anything for a good story. And then he would go on to talk about places he'd gone to eat, weird, interesting things. I usually start mine off with an anecdote. So when I was writing query letters in journalism, it was always an anecdote of like a really awesome story that I worked on that I was proud of, or, how I got this really awesome shot. Because when I was first starting, I was going for internships. I didn't have a lot of experience. So now as I write query letters to agents, now this is for acting because I haven't done any for writing. When I write an agent or a manager, I always think of what value can I give them? So what attracts an agent or a manager's attention is how much I book. So I will say in there, hey, I have a booking ratio of 70%, which is roughly true. I keep a record of what I book to what I audition for. And in a good year, I'll book about 70%. So I don't mind giving them that fact right up front. You want me? I can book this for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I try to make it sound like we're a team, because I want to be a teammate with whoever's representing me. So it's really interesting. You're going off of like, here's my accomplishments. And I guess saying, yeah, I can book this much is an accomplishment. And then I might list like, okay, I worked on these amazing projects in the past couple months, but it's really interesting. I always go at it from what kind of value can I add to them if I'm on their roster?
That's a great point. Yeah.
And I also think though too, like, and what value can you give me? Because it's not, you're teammates, so you're equals. So it's not just like, please take me, it's, we're working together. So how can we work together?
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing. I mean, I send them the, log lines for a couple of projects and the links to like our short films, kind of showing them, well, you might enjoy this. I'm sharing something with them that they might enjoy. And this one manager I just heard back from was really, excited to watch Synesthesia and Reclamation. He was very into that. He actually wasn't so much into my TV pilot, but then he said, well, I'm going to look at the other stuff. And then he got back to me again after watching the videos and was like, wow, this stuff's really great. So, you never know what they're going to be attracted to. It's kind of interesting. It's also important, and I think you actually mentioned this about trying to give them some value. Well, I only emailed companies that, well, one, say that they either accept query letters or want to hear your pitch, or don't specifically say they don't accept anything. So there's some that were in the middle that didn't say no but didn't say yes, so I would send queries to those too. So that's the first thing, is don't send something to somebody who will not read it. If you know they won't read it up front, don't send something to them, because then you're just annoying them. But once you figure out who you can send query letters to, make sure it's a good match. So I always spend a lot of time on the Internet Movie Database on my IMDb Pro account, researching all these companies to see what kind of films they've done before. If they're talent and they do literary and talent, see what actors they represent. I actually found the management company that represents The Rock. So I was like, wow, and then I kind of customized that letter saying, well, I've got this sci-fi franchise that I've, developed that I think would be great for your talent. So you can kind of work it that way. So again, here you're providing something for them that they can use in their business with people they're already working with.
Although managers aren't supposed to, just like agents aren't supposed to produce it. So I don't know if I would necessarily say, hey, I saw you had The Rock on your roster and I have this thing that The Rock would be great in. Like that might be, for the manager, if they actually like followed through on that would be a conflict of interest, I believe. But
well, they can always run it up the flagpole to whoever else would actually be producing it. But it's just trying to make a connection to them to say, look, I understand your business because I'm writing things that are similar to what you've done before. So, or with characters that would make sense for your talent. That's just a matter of packaging, not so much as producing, but packaging. There's nothing wrong with packaging, I don't think.
I would more look for, and this is what I do when I'm doing agent query letters now. I look more for how big is their roster? Do they have anybody else like me? And I would assume in writing it'd be the same. Like if they're like 50 million sci-fi writers on their roster, they don't need another one necessarily. I would also see if you can find out their reputation. Some places will hold your hand and they really want to develop you. Other places, if you're number 500 on the roster, they're not going to care about you. So I would look more for reputation and do I think I can work with them and can we grow together? But based on where I am in my career.
That's a good point. When I was looking at managers and agents, I started at the top of the list. Like I started, going from number one and worked my way down. And as I got down further on the list, I started to see these smaller companies, but they were more interested in hearing from you. So by, digging deeper, getting further and further down the list, you might find some people that are a little more eager to work with you or interested in seeing your material.
Yeah, because the top like 4 or 5, 10 agencies, they want talent that's proven. And if you're an up and comer, and this is across the board, this is acting, music, writing, you need to have some sort of resume behind you before they're even going to look at you. And even then, you have to be a top earner before they're going to invest their time and energy in you. So if you're just starting out, or if you're like middle tier and you've got a few things published or written or whatever, but not, nothing that people would recognize or something, you're starting at the bottom to middle. And you have to accept that. You have to be honest about where you are. Yeah. And a lot of those boutiques though are great because they don't have a lot of clients. They'll answer your calls and emails. They will hold your hand a bit. And that's really good when you're starting out.
Right. And we're having, pretty good success so far with our shorts. The question is, how are we going to, get those to the next level? How are we going to use that to, take us, where we want to go? And I think sharing those, your past work helps a lot. So that's why I included those in my queries. So it wasn't just about, hey, I'm a great writer and read my script. It was, I actually produced something and here it is, and it's done really well. That shows you're multi-talented too. So you're not only a writer, but you can also get things done. So
yeah, I mean, even if you write a letter and you don't even have one short film or something that you can show, or maybe you've won an award or something. If you have absolutely nothing, your first step is to go out there and produce something before you start looking for representation. But
well, I think people are always willing to sit down and watch a 5-minute video, or at least half of that.
I don't know if they'll give you 5 minutes, but yeah.
And if it's good, then they'll keep watching. But a script, that's a little bit more of a commitment to read a whole script. So, and like you always hear about, they'll read the first 10 pages. Well, if they don't like that, then they're going to stop. But something visual, I think people are more attracted to something visual. And if they know it's only going to take them 5 minutes to watch, then, like a sizzle reel, like we talked about doing a sizzle reel for one of our projects, that actually can get you in the door almost, faster than even a great script, because, they've actually seen what it can do. They can actually kind of get the feeling for it a little stronger that way. So,
yeah. I mean, and on a final thought, this has nothing to do with query letters, but this is like your first step before you go in. I think, especially if you are just starting and you don't have some sort of video, some sort of, this is a short film I wrote and it was produced, 20 years ago, probably an agent or manager would have been like, okay, send me your first 10, 20 pages, because it was so expensive to produce anything. But now, if you're a songwriter, there is no reason you can't record that song. If you're a filmmaker, there's no reason you can't produce a quick 3-minute short, because the technology is so cheap. So you really don't have an excuse to not do it.
Yeah, people probably have all the tools they need already. They don't even realize it to do something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's where you start. I mean, they even tell actors, go shoot your own thing. And it's great because we can all shoot our own thing. And then it's horrible because there's a glut of stuff on the market.
Yeah. The noise ratio is high. Yeah.
But because technology is so readily available, you really have no excuse. So how about for you guys? What questions do you have when writing query letters to agents and managers? Let us know at WG Therapy. You can also check us out online at writersgrouptherapy.com. And if you like what you hear, subscribe and share it with your friends. We'll see you next week.